Hey everyone, your designers are here. I'm Anita at Cedar Hill Farmhouse.
And I'm Yvonne at Stone Gable.
And I'm Kelly. It's my soulful home.
We've got tips and tricks and decorating advice for you today, so let's get started.
Today is episode 254, Why and How to Hire a Designer. And if you're interested in looking at the show notes for today's episode, you're going to go to decoratingtipsandtricks.com/254.
Well,
Talking about style. We segue into designers. We segue into interior decorating.
Well, I think the first question is, why would you even want to hire a designer, an interior designer or an interior decorator? And I think that's a good question because a lot of people do have a lot of knowledge about what goes together, what works. So, a lot of times people feel like they don't need to hire one, and sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. And we certainly advocate that you do as much as you can yourself, and that we encourage everyone to do to be their own decorator, be their own designer, up to a certain point. But at some point, you might need to hire one. So that's what we're going to talk about now. And I think one of the biggest reasons to hire someone is when you are doing some sort of remodel. I mean, and I'm not talking about online consults, but local consults. When people hire me, it's usually because they're getting ready to remodel their house. They're getting ready to, spend some big bucks. And you don't want to be doing a kitchen remodel and then realize that you forgot something critical, or, you weren't thinking about the work paths, something like that. So that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons to hire an interior designer would be if you're doing a big remodel on your house or something. You really, it's kind of the pay me now or pay me later. Pay the person now, get the experience and the, thought process of how to do the room, or you might be paying later because, what you chose didn't really work for whatever reason. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons.
Anita, I so agree with you. In the long run, if you're doing a big project, hiring a designer can save you money because you make mistakes or you don't think of things. And I think it's so important that a designer has done this before. They know what they're doing. They know there's a system to it and they can go through it, and they hit all the points that you can't hit. And another thing I think it also does is a lot of times designers have a wealth of resources that most other people don't have. And they can bring that wealth of resource into a project that would take you hundreds of hours to figure out.
Well, that is so well said, Yvonne. And that's something that I ran into working with builders too, is it's really kind of about the tradespeople. Because if you're doing it yourself and and maybe you're your own general contractor, and perhaps you need about 5 different trades. Maybe you need a carpenter, a plumber, electrician, and, some other people, a sheetrocker. I mean, they're all, you have to, that's a lot of work, even finding somebody who's really good at what they do. And so that's very time consuming. And again, it's all about having good people working for you. And that's what I learned building houses is that, working with builders. I mean, was not a house builder, but if you choose I would never go with the lowest price on a builder, because if you choose a builder based just on price, you can get into a lot of trouble.
Right.
And it's just your money ahead again, just to find someone who's very reputable. So sources that the designer has are gold.
Yeah, we encourage you all, in almost every episode, that you can do this yourself, and you can for sure. But there may be circumstances, as Anita and Yvonne are pointing out, that you may find yourself in need of somebody just to help you maybe with the whole big picture, how are all the rooms going to integrate, or certainly the building and getting the subcontractors. When I moved to California, I didn't know anybody, and we were renovating our first house here. And I would normally act as my own general contractor. I even have a post on my blog about that. And that's certainly what I've done here. But landing here from 3,000 miles away. I didn't know one plumber from the next or one tile guy from the next. So I did work with a general contractor initially, and he said something funny to me, sort of midway into our relationship, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on, but he was not pleased that I was as involved in my own house as I was. So, but I needed that help in the beginning because I didn't know who to choose. And so it was a good choice for me at that time. And I'm sure it saved me a lot of money and time because he brought in reputable people. So there are a lot of reasons why you might want to bring in some help when you're doing a project. But we do want you to know the caveat is you are a designer and you can do this. Just sometimes, like in anything, if you're an athlete and you're working out or, you go to the gym, sometimes you want to like get someone to show you how to do something right, or you have a personal trainer, or you go to a class and you watch and you learn. So it's sometimes you need just somebody to step in and help you a little bit as you go along in your designing path.
And we can even niche this down. I mean, we can even funnel it down. Even if, let's say you're designing a room and you just get stuck and you can't progress, or you lose momentum sort of part of the way through even a smaller project, there is nothing wrong with hiring somebody who knows what they're doing to, help you keep the ball rolling, give you a second opinion, bring fresh ideas that maybe you haven't thought of. So really on all levels, there are good ideas and times when it's really important to hire somebody who knows what they're doing.
Well, and even with smaller things, spending $500 or $1,000 on curtains, blinds, shades, maybe table, chairs. Again, if you're feeling some uncomfort, if you feel confident making those decisions, then, I think that's great to do it yourself. But if you're feeling uncomfortable, I think that's when you want to maybe, get someone to advise you.
And Anita, you said it right. $500 may seem like, I don't want to spend that when I'm thinking about this room, or $1,000. Believe me, it's a money saver, because the mistakes you will make, and I've done this, have cost so much more than if I would have hired somebody, even though I've done this, oh goodness, for so long, just to get a second eye in there and saying, what do you think about this? Or what is the placement of that? And it would save you a lot of money. You'll recoup that money just in the mistakes and the headaches that you'll make.
Yeah. And sometimes if you're purchasing with certain stores, they might have in-house designers that they'll send out, and it may be something where you have to pay. And then if you do make the purchase, they take that money off and they credit you. So you may want to look into something like that if it's a big ticket item, like a whole house full of draperies, or if you're buying sofas and things like that. So I know Pottery Barn, I think they did that at some point. I don't know if they still do that, but that's an option as well. But we just wanted to go through today and let you know some things that you should look out for and some questions that you should ask when you're thinking about maybe hiring someone. And I think that a lot of these questions might not be ones that have come to mind initially. So we were going to run through the questions and we could comment on whether or not we didn't make up the questions, but these are questions that
are very common.
Used. Yeah. And we can, and then we can chat about each one as we go through. So with that being said, it's a little uncomfortable sometimes for a person to interview someone, in effect. Some people would be very good at that. Like if they were having someone come to do their garden work or something else in their house, and you might say, well, do you have any references and what are your experience? And I don't know, sometimes in the decorator designer world, maybe the hirer might feel intimidated by the hiree, and it might be a different sort of dynamic. So we want you to feel empowered if you are going to hire someone that's local to you to come into your house and have a look and help you out. It's not inappropriate to be asking these questions, and the person who's coming should expect to be able to answer these questions for you, and then it'll open up lots of conversations, because this is not someone coming to mow your grass, right? Or someone's coming to maybe put up some wallpaper or something like that, where it's a very specific job. If you're hiring a designer, you guys have to be on the same page. Even if their look, for their own house or what they're really drawn to, it might not be your look. If they're a professional designer, they should be able to do any look, but they need to understand what you want. And I think you really have to develop a friendship. I know my clients that I'm here in person with and the other ones, I have a real friendship with them. So I think that's important. And if you don't click initially, then maybe you want to hire, you want to interview one or two other people. So let's dive into the question. So
can I just mention two other things before you hire someone? I just want you to also be aware of I think there is some unease sometimes hiring somebody to come in and give you advice. And there's really two things I think people fear. One is they fear losing control. And the second thing they fear is exposure. Exposure of what they don't know.
Wow, that's a good one. Such a good point.
Yeah, so those are some things that you're probably going to be feeling, and that's normal. Everybody, anytime anyone calls someone in to help them, those are two very normal feelings. So if you're feeling that, it's okay. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think
with your house, again, it's so personal. It's, it's like you're showing someone, oh, these are my important things. This is my look. This is what I love. Like, is that okay? I get that all a lot. Like, is it okay if we keep that? Well, yeah, of course.
It's
if
your
you
house.
have that, we're going to work around it, work with it and make it better.
And I think one of the biggest things you, as a person who is thinking about hiring a designer, is have the attitude that you're going to be like a lifelong learner, that you're excited about learning and soak up as much as you can. And I think maybe that'll take some of that fear away, because it's good to be a learner and it's good to learn new things. And I get excited when I'm learning something. So maybe just sort of flip that a little bit and let your designer know, hey, I don't know this, but I'm really excited to learn about it.
Yeah. Okay. So say you find someone or a friend recommends someone and you're talking to them on the phone, or maybe you meet them for coffee, or they actually come to your house. So I would start with a question like this, which is very broad and sweeping, sort of, well, how do you decide on what projects are a good fit for you? So you can ask the designer, what kind of projects do you choose? If they're saying, oh, well, I do primarily, dental offices, then maybe that's not the person for you to be working in your house.
That's a great question.
Or
so you're kind of not saying like, oh, show me your resume, but you're just sort of opening up the conversation. What feels good to you? They might be a terrific designer, but maybe they work for a bigger firm that only does commercial stuff or something like that. So that's something you might want to explore.
Or if they say, oh, I only work on my last 5 projects were multi-million-dollar projects. You're thinking, well, maybe that's not in my budget.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And maybe if that's the case, I mean, the reality is if they have a $5 million house and you want to, your budget for the designer is 500 and you want 3 questions answered, maybe your questions are not going to be answered as quickly.
Or if they say they've got a $2,000 retainer required, then they may not be for you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because that's what you're going to spend on the sofa.
Right. Yeah. That's a very good question too. What obviously at some point you're going to want to know what the rates are. And some people do start out with a retainer that they work off. A retainer simply means you would pay them X amount and then they would work off that. It's sort of a little guarantee for them that, you just don't flake on them after they've done some work, because, if you're going to say, oh, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to go to my fabric stores and find all these fabrics for you. And then next time they reach you, you're like, I kind of decided I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm sorry you wasted your time. So, it is fair to be paying a retainer. That's a good point, Anita. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. So another question is, here's my question. Ding, ding, ding. Do you welcome client involvement, or do you prefer clients to be hands off in the project?
Wow, that's a big one there.
Because I really had a problem. We went from this whole honeymoon stage with, that general contractor that I worked with. And he was sort of / designer too. I mean, he had an artistic background, and he did come up with some good ideas, but he did not, like, he wanted to control the entire project, and basically, wanted me to, come back a month later and have my house be done. And that's not what I wanted. I really just wanted somebody, like I was saying, to provide reputable subcontractors and to help me with whatever needed to be done in California with regard to permits and all that, because I didn't know any of that. So
Kelly.
I was remiss in not setting that up from the beginning to let him know how involved I was going to be. So we really had, a sort of a contentious relationship towards
Kelly,
that.
how stressed were you? I mean, wasn't that a terribly stressful situation?
Yeah,
I mean, this is your home.
3,000 miles away, and I didn't want to move. And, ultimately I'm so happy here, but, I had 2 little kids, and we were living in during the renovation. And of course I went from, well, I think let's just buy this house. And I think we'll just paint the cabinets, and we'll redo this one bathroom. And I'm thinking in my mind, yeah. And after I do that bathroom, I'm going back to New York, and that'll be the end of this, surfer boy idea. And, lo and behold, I began to love it here. But then the painting the cabinets became just rip it all out and let's do it. So we, lived once again in a place with no kitchen. And
I think most of us, if you've got a little bit of an eye, or you've been decorating your home for any length of time, you do want to be somewhat involved. You're going to live in that house. That house has to become a part of you, and it has to be something that you love to live with.
Don't you just love a great recommendation from a friend? Well, we're delighted to be recommending these companies and their wonderful products to you today. And let them know your friends at DTT sent you. Inevitably, with the new year come wellness goals. One very effective and easy to reach goal is to add Dose to your wellness regime. Dose is expertly formulated organic wellness shots that support your liver in one delicious drink. Formulated with ingredients clinically shown to support liver health. Potent turmeric, milk thistle, and ginger. There's 0 sugar and 0 calories. Did you know that your liver performs over 500 special functions? Since I learned all that my liver is doing, I started with Dose to support all those vital functions. I take a shot of refreshing Dose 2 times per week to combat everyday toxins from food, meds, alcohol, and unhealthy air. Since starting with Dose about a month ago, I am definitely feeling an overall improvement in my health. So if you want to give Dose a shot and invest in your health like I have, Dose is offering DTT listeners 15% off your first order, plus an additional 15% off if you subscribe for a monthly delivery. That's 30% off your first order. So go to dosedaily.co/DTT and use the code DTT. That's dosedaily.co.co/DTT and use the code DTT. Pesto pork chops over Parmesan polenta. Not that easy to say, but oh so easy to make with Green Chef. Green Chef is the #1 meal kit company for eating well, and we have such a great deal for you. You're going to save $250. Listen on for the details on that. Green Chef makes eating well easy for any lifestyle, whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, or just looking to eat more balanced meals. We're getting into the busy holiday season, so it's a perfect time to have Green Chef help you out. Let Green Chef take the work out of eating clean this holiday season with their chef-crafted, nutritionist-approved recipes featuring fresh ingredients and nothing artificial. And you know what? You don't have to lose track of your healthy eating habits during the holidays. Every Green Chef customer gets a free session with their registered dietitians who will walk you through how to make clean eating work for you. So sign up for your free session and start on the road towards better health today. And that deal I want to tell you about. Visit greenchef.com/DTT250 and use the code DTT250 for $250 off your order. So that's greenchef.com/DTT250 and use the code DTT250 for $250 off your order.
I can't even imagine going into a house that somebody else has designed. That I've been in homes. I have friends who've had designers totally do their rooms or part of their house. And I'm thinking, this doesn't look like you at all.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
most of
that's
my
a
friends
problem.
actually are not happy because it just feels cold and it feels off. So I would venture to say that most of the people listening do want some kind of involvement and a voice in how their home's going to look.
Oh yeah, for sure. So that's a good question to ask. And you know, and that'll develop as also whether or not you feel like you can be friends with this person, you know, and they get you. They need to get you.
Well, let me just
another
make a
question.
point. Can I just make a point about that?
Sure.
I've had a couple of designers come in here just to give a second eye, and I've not necessarily become friends with them, but we're on this sort of the same wavelength, and we have a very congenial relationship. So at least that's got to be like your baseline.
Right. Right. Okay. So 3, this is kind of a fun question, and this might open up lots of ideas and might give you ideas you didn't have before. What elements define your own style? So what is the person's style? That may be important if you are going for a specific style. Like if you are a farmhouse / cottage country kind of person, and this person is a mid-century modern person,
Right.
that might just not be the best person for you because it's human nature. They're going to be drawn to things that you aren't drawn to. So you can ask and have the conversation verbally. You can also ask to see if they have a portfolio. Most people now are going to have a website. And if they don't have a website, my eyebrow is going to go up. They need to have something to show you, either their own work or past projects or something like that. So you should be able to get a handle on what their style is.
And here's the other issue. You want a designer that helps you define your style. Some people actually, I think that's one of the most important questions you can ask yourself if you decorate. What is my style? I mean, styles evolve and they change. And I don't have the same style. And I'm sure you girls didn't, because we've all been through the autumnal phase.
Mm-hmm.
And our styles do evolve and change. But do you have a handle on what your style is? And your designer, if it's a good designer, needs to ferret that out.
But you know, it's interesting. I think most people really choose the designer because they've seen the designer's work. So you really do usually have a feel for the designer's style before you work with them, because probably you've seen their work in a magazine or online, on Houzz or Pinterest or someplace. So, you know, I think that's kind of the most obvious thing that people tend to do, because I know nobody's asked me to do a mid-century modern house ever.
Mm-hmm.
Just never.
Well, you know,
I've had one person ask me to add mid-century modern to their dining room, and that was a little tricky, but it worked. But yeah, usually no.
Well, lots of times though, I mean, yes, it can come that way, but oftentimes, you know, you see a friend and they know you're renovating. They're like, oh, I worked with so-and-so, you know, she's in town. She's been working in, you know, town for 25 years, you know, and blah, blah, blah. So you may not really know, you know, because you might not be seeing their work other than maybe in your friend's house or, you know, your friend and a friend of friend. So I think it's a good thing to talk about. And it just opens up a conversation about your style. And maybe you're going to then say, oh, I love this, but I want to tend towards that. Another good question is, and I think this one really can reveal a lot. What does the designer find most challenging about designing a home? You know, and if the first thing they say is budget, and you know you're super budget conscious,
Whoa,
that might be a problem. Like, I really have a hard time. You know, most people aren't going to be that honest, I guess. But if they said, "Oh yeah, I have a really hard time staying on budget," you know, my last job,
Oh yeah, that would be scary.
it was $1,000, and I actually, you know, I spent $100,000 on fabric, you know, that sort of thing. So that's probably not going to be. They're probably not going to come across with that sort of information, but they might say, "Oh, the hardest part for me is, you know, the last, you know, 10%. And you know, you need to have this done by Christmas time or something like that." And so you might have a time frame. So there might be some information that you get from that answer that tells you, oh, this is the person for me.
Oh, here's one.
Not.
My tradespeople quit on me all the time.
Oh yeah, that's a bad one.
Yeah.
That's what's a red flag right there.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. And here's a good one. And, with all these questions, it obviously depends on your personality and how, what environment you are with this person. But it doesn't have to be like you're sitting at the desk and they're sitting across from you and you're formally interviewing them. This can all just be worked into a normal conversation or in emails and let them answer you that way. What's your project management style? So, where do they start? Did they start at the end? Did they say, oh, well, I like to start with the rug and then I work backwards and then I find the plumber, that sort of thing. You're like, whoa.
I would worry about that one right there.
Right. So how do they see the whole flow of it going? What do you guys think about that?
That's an excellent question.
That's a good one.
And that's something that I think, we who decorate and are designers, there is just like a system that you follow. And how do you get to that? Do you go from the end product, like then to the beginning, or do you start at the beginning and go to the end? And I just think it's a matter of how people think. And I think once you get a good system down, and if you see it's a good system, a designer has, let them go with it, because that tells me that they know they've done this before and they know what they're doing.
Now, this is kind of, might make the other person feel a little uncomfortable, but hey, this is a good question to ask because everybody does it. Everybody makes mistakes. So what's an example of a mistake that you made and how you handled it?
Ooh, that's a good one. And I don't know that
you bought too much fabric. Did you say, oh, I'm so sorry. Now I can make you a ball gown and you have to pay for the fabric? Or did they just eat it? They just like, oh, my bad. I got to pay for that. Or,
right.
Did they cry? What happened?
Well, right, because mistakes happen. I mean, there's so many factors. There's so many things going on in a remodel. It's hard to think of every single thing ahead of time because sometimes something may not quite fit in a space, even though you measured, but I forgot there was this molding that stuck out. And then there's a lot of moving parts. So there's going to be mistakes. Everybody has.
And I think the deal is that the designer has to make it right.
Yeah. I mean, if it's their choice, or if the client says, no, you must buy this. You're telling me it's persimmon, but I think it's cherry red and they buy it, that's a different thing.
That is a different
But
thing.
if it's totally in the designer's realm, then,
they have to make
do.
it right. That's right.
Yeah, sure.
The thing about mistakes is, of course, you can't ensure there's never going to be a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. Supreme Court justices makes mistakes. Designers make mistakes. Plumbers everybody makes a mistake. But if you do spend some money to hire somebody, one of the reasons you're spending that money is to try to avoid mistakes. Avoid your own mistakes or mistakes made by the subcontractors, because the designer should be overseeing the whole project. So it is a little mistake proofing insurance to go for and spend the extra money to hire someone to come in. So you shouldn't expect a lot of mistakes, but as I said, they do happen. But there's a couple of funny ones come to mind. I was reading that Bee Cottage story book. I told you guys about that. I found it at the yard sale. And actually a few people said they then picked it up and were really enjoying it. Well, I read it over vacation and she came out. She had a designer working with her, but she came out to the house, which was out in the Hamptons, from the city on the weekend. And the giant hole for the pool had been dug in the wrong spot. Oh. That's a big mistake.
That is a big mistake.
Well, I wasn't out there at the farm when they built the pad, which is kind of all the foundation that they were going to put the pier and beam in. It was angled not exactly the way I had intended, and it was kind of in front of some trees where we had cleared. It was clear we had cleared the trees. And yet they put it kind of next to the trees. And, by then the guy had already come and I just thought, I mean, that was just because I wasn't there. I showed them where to do it and I come back and it's not exactly right.
So is your house not where you really wanted it?
It's not pointed the direction I wanted it pointed.
Okay.
I mean, but it's only slightly off by it's probably, like 10 to 20 feet off east, and then not angled the way I wanted it, but it's not off a huge amount.
Nita Jean did heads roll.
No.
Well, that's another story for another day.
Let's get this last question in quickly before our time is up.
Green Chef is a delicious delight any time of year, but especially during the holidays. What a wonderful vision to behold as the Green Chef boxes on your doorstep. Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for eating well. And it makes eating well so easy with plans to fit every lifestyle, whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, or just looking to eat a more balanced diet. So let Green Chef take the work out of eating clean this holiday season. And if you've got guests coming, shop Green Bundles. They're now available at the Green Market. It's your one-stop shop for nutritious grab-and-go breakfasts, including vegan options, brunch kits, wholesome lunches, ready-to-eat snacks, veggie sides, and more. You can feel your best this December and do your best with Green Chef because they offset 100% of the delivery emissions as well as 100% of the plastic in every box. Go to greenchef.com/60DTT and use the code 60DTT and get 60% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. greenchef.com/60DTT and use the code 60DTT to get 60% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. Go ahead, clean out your closet, then head straight to Quince. I love every item Quince offers, from wardrobe to decor, and I can really recommend their Ultra Stretch Super Wide Leg Pant at $49.90. The price is unbeatable, and the look is so flattering. It keeps you in on top and flares out of the bottom. Everything feels right with Quince. The price, the quality, and the sustainability. Quince offers a range of luxury wardrobe and home goods at prices within reach. And like Quince's clothing, their home goods are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, along with premium fabrics and finishes. Once you've cleaned out your closet and refreshed with Quince, you can also add something to your home decor. So give your wardrobe and your home the refresh it needs with Quince. Go to quince.com/DTT to get free shipping and 365-day returns on your next order. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/DTT for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/DTT. And let me know how you love those pants. Okay. Here's one. And it brings up that nasty word again, budget. How do you prioritize a project? Is it the budget?
Is
it the look? Is it something else I can't even think of? What? So how do they prioritize what gets done?
Wow. And shouldn't that be partly what?
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Yeah, because I think a lot of that depends on the client. What do they prioritize? Is budget like a non-negotiable?
I thought she meant who does what project do they decide has priority? Is that which client?
Oh,
is
no,
that what you meant?
I think it's more specific to your project. Okay, so now we have this project and you want to do a kitchen and you want to do, the powder room and the master, and all these things there's so many moving parts. So how does that prioritize? Is the most important thing the budget? And I think Yvonne is absolutely right. I mean, that should really derive from
what the client says.
But
that's right.
You don't know if they're your client yet. So I guess the question is, in general, how do you like to approach a project?
Oh, I would definitely say from the client, what's important. I would come right back with, well, what is important to you? And,
well, then you get the job.
And you really, as somebody hiring a designer, you really need to think about that. I think that's your responsibility. What is most important to you? I mean, honestly, it's going to be a combination of things. They don't want to spend $100,000. So I bet you budget does come into play. I mean, I can't imagine it not coming into play.
For 99.9% of the people.
That's right. Or,
Yeah.
I want to live a comfortable life, or I want these things. I want to keep these things, or I want these colors. And I mean, so there's a lot. That's why you hire a designer, because you put all those things on their shoulders so they can deal with them in an orderly and cohesive fashion.
I have yet to have a client who was not budget conscious.
Yeah.
And I mean people with I've dealt with, several $1 million home people buying those houses, and budgets, it doesn't matter how expensive the house is. It's always an issue. And, I've dealt with people with, much, other builds that are but much less, but I'm just saying it doesn't matter. I mean, I have yet to meet a client who doesn't care about budget.
I agree with you.
So maybe if budget is not mentioned at all when you ask that question, then that might be a signal for you. But, otherwise, I like to approach this. Because think about it, even if you're doing a small, like if you're creating a vignette in your house, the tiniest little design project you could do, right? You're still like, okay, how do I approach it? What do I prioritize? Am I first getting my foundational piece, or am I first finding the tiny little, the smallest element, and am I working backwards? So everybody has a style, whether it's on a really small scale or a bigger scale. So you should just understand what that person does. Again, you should feel everybody that is taking the time to listen to us loves design and loves decor and loves their home. And you are all designers. But sometimes maybe you want to have another opinion or somebody come in and give you some fresh ideas. And that's all great. But you need to know, in a relationship with a designer, really you're in charge, right? So don't let anybody boss you around.
I so agree with that. I think that, you have to live in your home. So don't let a designer sway you into something. Oh, you will love this once it's in. Ooh, I would really worry about that. A designer has the know-how, but you know what you love and you know how you live, and you're going to be living in that house and have those things for a very long time. So you need to go, oh, I really love that. I feel great about that. I'm comfortable with that. If she decides that it's the persimmon sofa, and you get the beige one, and later you go, oh, I really would have loved that persimmon sofa, that's sort of on you. But, you've got to be the final decider. You don't want somebody coming in and designing a home that's really pretty, but you have no idea who lives there. That would be like the worst nightmare.
Right. But also, I would also say if a designer comes up with some idea, it might be beautiful, but it just might not be something that's your style. So it's very, very important to speak up. And if your designer can't handle that, then you're working with the wrong person. It's got to be.
And you're back to question number 2, and then you didn't get a straight answer to.
I know. But you've got to be honest, though. If you don't just say you like it, if you really don't.
That's right, Anita. Oh, you have to have the courage. If you hire a designer, you have to have the courage to be able to speak up. But here's the other side of the coin. That designer may open your eyes. Keep your eyes open, start, like I said, be a learner and be open to fresh new ideas and how delightful they would be in your home too. So I think it's
also fun, isn't it?
Oh, it's such a two-way street.
Decorating your home.
Well,
obviously we can talk about it for days and days and days on end.
And actually we can, but we're out of time. So we hope that you will keep these 7 questions in your mind if you need to hire a designer. And just remember, we are here to help you create a beautiful home. Until next time.
Thanks so much for listening to Decorating Tips and Tricks. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, then subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode.